I don't tend to bring too many of my IEM reviews to YouTube, but you know that when I do, it's either going to be a really controversial view or an absolute banger. In the case of the Simgot EM6L, it's most definitely the latter. Keep watching for my thoughts on possibly the best sub $100 IEM of 2023 so far. Simgot is arguably a slightly lesser known chifi brand, but they've been around since 2015, slowly but surely making an impression on the market with a string of very impressive releases. And unlike some of their competitors, they're not churning out release after release after release, all of different driver configurations and tunings. Instead, they've been quite methodical about it, and they've definitely ramped up the releases over the last 12 months, but all of them have been quite eye-catching and impressive in their own ways. But this one is their most premium and arguably most ambitious release yet. The MSRP on the EM6L is $110, so it's not strictly speaking within that sub $100 category, although I'm sure soon enough it will be close to that, especially if you can pick up some vouchers from somewhere. In the meantime, there are purchase links in the description below, and of course they are non-affiliated. And you're getting quite the driver arrangement with an 8mm high polymer diaphragm, dual cavity dynamic driver dealing with the bass, and two pairs of balanced armatures handling the mids and the trebles, brought together in a hybrid configuration via a three-way crossover. Simgot stands for simple and elegant, but that driver configuration is anything but simple, so I was really interested to hear how they perform. Simgot have given this release the Phoenix moniker, even inventing a nice little logo for it. And there's lots of branding on the front, which reminds you that this is kind of like a rebirth for the EM series. The EM5 actually developed 5 years ago, and they've been working away at this sequel for the last couple of years. Before we move into the sound quality, let's have a look at the unboxing, some of the accessories that you're getting, and the build quality. And the Phoenix theme that we talked about in the intro that Simgot have attached to this release hits you immediately from the moment you encounter the outer enclosure. The box oozes class and it's commensurate with the price tag, with its glossy black theme, striking image on the front, and a nice visual representation of the driver arrangement and also the frequency response chart on the back. And it also lists some of the key parameters. You've got 26 ohm impedance, you've got 119 dB VMS sensitivity, you've got an effective frequency response of 20 Hz to 20 kHz, and the connector is a 0.78 QDC 2-pin. Now, it isn't uncommon for IEMs around this price point to have a very fancy unboxing, and sometimes the audio quality doesn't quite match the unboxing experience, but the first impressions are excellent. I would have absolutely no hesitations about giving this as a gift. Simgot have really leaned on that Phoenix theme. They've even used a Phoenix logo, which you see when you start to unbox and get into the inner layers, and then you'll see it again on the shell of the earbud itself. The IEMs are held in a foam inlay, and then you've got a variety of different accessories which are held in different boxes, including the ear tips and a cable. And you'll find that cable shrouded inside a small, quite generic looking carry case, and I feel like this was actually an opportunity missed for even more Phoenix branding from Simgot here. It would have been really nice to have that Phoenix logo on the outside just to embellish that theme even further. Functionally and size wise, the case is fine, and there's a little pocket in there on the inside for you to store your spare tips. And the cable itself is okay quality. It's listed as a high purity OFC silver plated 0.78 2-pin cable. There's no red or blue on the cables because it's a QDC connector. However, they've slightly angled it in one direction so you can tell which way the cable is meant to be fitted on the respective left and right IEMs. You've got an anti-tangle thing on the cable and it works pretty well. And then at the other end, you've got a 3.5mm jack, which is branded Simgot. And the cable's decent enough quality, it's decent enough length as well. It means you can have your phone or your DAC in your trouser pocket and still be able to move quite freely. The supply tip selection is slightly disappointing. You've only got a small, medium and a large. The quality of the tip is okay, it's certainly better than what you get with TWS, but I did very quickly switch them out for the FIO HS18, which I find more comfortable, and it had the added bonus of making that mid-bass sound even tighter. When you ask people their favourite ear tips, you'll very rarely hear these Theos included in the same breath as your Spinfits and your Aslers. But for me, that comfort factor, the way it's been designed, it's ideal certainly for IEMs rather than TWS, where the nozzle is a little bit longer. And the price, you can pick up 2 sets of small, medium and large for less than a £5. I think that's an absolute bargain. The user guide is in English and Chinese, but with IEMs it's not like we ever have to consult that. There's no button configurations to worry about or anything like that. So the accessories overall slightly underwhelming, but if I'm going to be underwhelmed by anything, I'd rather it be the accessories than the build quality or the sound. For me, the unboxing is what you kind of expect at this price point, but it's still very, very nicely delivered anyway. Now, in terms of the build quality, the EM6L boasts a 3D printed high precision resin that the shell comprises and a mirror finished CNC processed faceplate. And it lives up to Simgo's motto of being simple and elegant. You've got the L and the R printed on the inside of the respective buds in gold, as well as the EM6L Phoenix model name. Back to the plates, where you've got a small tuning hole at the bottom of each of the buds, and on one you've got the Simgo logo and on the other you've got that Phoenix logo, which we've seen throughout the unboxing experience. Now, I don't think that plate necessarily oozes premium like it does with some of their previous releases, or even a budget release, something like the KB Air Lark. As you can see there, it's kind of a brush finish and it's not so much as a fingerprint magnet as the EM6L. As I mentioned previously, some of Simgo's previous releases, like the EA500, have a full CNC shell, which we usually associate with more premium buds. Instead, as we said previously, Simgo have gone full resin, accompanying that mirror finish CNC process faceplate. There's a mesh cover over the driver nozzle and the slightly ugly protruding QDC connectors. Now, usually I'm a sucker for a full CNC shell design, but in this instance it enables the IEM to be a little bit more lightweight, and that definitely adds to the comfort. A weight of just 5 grams and a quite flat inside of the shell, so it's not particularly fitted in its design. It becomes very clear that Simgo have tried to optimize comfort with this model. The depth of the earphone is on the face of it around about average, but they have a very shallow insertion. The nozzle itself is around 5mm in length and 6mm exactly in diameter, and this makes them both ideal for long listening sessions and also wearing when you're out and about. Unlike most IEMs, they don't use the entirety of the real estate in your conker and rely on the shape of your conker in order to help augment stability. Instead, they've just made really intelligent use of the space, and as a result they don't poke out of your ears anything like as much as some of the other hybrids I've tried in the past from the likes of Eco and KZ. And most importantly, let's move on to the sound. The EM6L is a very smooth, well-balanced V-shaped IEM with a warm tone and a thick, very natural timbre. Tuned to the Harman 2019 target, they use a 3-way crossover to bring the driver configuration together. Often this is easier said than done, but with the EM6L there is a really natural cohesion that you can sense immediately, getting the best out of each of the sets of drivers. They aren't especially technical, and I don't think they're designed at analytical listening, but they're a hugely enjoyable listen with great longevity thanks to the boosted bass, lush mids and smooth understated trebles. The bass has a fun, boomy nature to it that translates well to all music styles, especially house and techno. Lower frequencies are dense and layered, kick drums are punchy and full. There's not quite the subwoofer feel that I particularly enjoy with certain sets of IEMs, but the sub bass still has a very satisfying rumble. At first, I found the mid bass to be a shade muddy, although I improved this immediately by switching the tips out to a wider bore, and once I'd switched those out, everything sounded much more controlled. It's a fast and chunky bass, but if there's any criticism, you could say that there's perhaps a lack of texture. Even so, this warm sounding IEM will give enough bass to satisfy certainly the average user and maybe even bass heads as well. The mid-range is, from the graph, recessed, but it certainly doesn't feel overly recessed. Vocals are seriously smooth, very lush sounding, and the warmer tone benefits male vocals in particular. Sopranos in R&B tracks just sound really, really nice. Female vocals are perhaps more forward than male vocals, although they can sound a shade thin, and I'm being overly critical here, but in almost all instances it's a very clean vocal delivery that's engaging. It will keep you coming back to the EM6L. The trebles are again very controlled, very natural sounding. It makes them ideal for long listening sessions. There's absolutely no hint of fatigue or sibilance, and the subtle peak from 6 to 8K brings enough vibrancy and definition that will definitely satisfy the majority of users, particularly those who prefer a slightly more laid back roll off treble. I found the imaging to be very good for $100 set. There's above average accuracy here, and placement, certainly outside of those lower frequencies, is very straightforward. The staging is wide and expansive with good depth and height, and driving the EM6L is really straightforward as well. I had good success with it just plugging it directly into the 3.5mm jack on my Sony Xperia 1, and when using it with other devices I used my cheapo Ecolot adapter and still had great success with it. They still sounded fantastic. So to summarize, the EM6L, a really pleasant surprise, definitely signals Simgo's intention to the market for 2023. Other than a few minor quibbles like the use of QDC connectors, the lack of a branded case, maybe the paucity in terms of the selection of ear tips, it really is quite difficult to find fault with this release, particularly at this price category. They're super comfy and the shell is reasonably well made. Whilst I usually prefer full CNC designs and a bit more of a custom feel to the inside, on this occasion I can let it slide because it contributes to the earbuds feeling nice and lightweight, and it's just super comfortable for long periods of time. They've become my go-to for prolonged listening sessions. The expansive soundstage, good imaging, fine vocal representation and bouncy bass will particularly satisfy those who like a more sub-bass centric natural V-shaped sound. Don't expect a super analytical experience, but do expect to be entertained. The Simgot EM6L is a cracking IEM in that $100 category and one of the contenders for best value IEM of 2023. Remember, over at Headfi I go into even more detail and you got other reviewers' thoughts there and comparisons to other similar models as well, so I've put the link in the description for that. Do give the video a like if you found it useful and consider subscribing to grow the channel further. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.